welcome back to the channel. I just got done wrapping up our trip to Myrtle Beach. We stayed at Myrtle Beach State Park. Not the biggest state park we've ever been to. It is 312 acres, located on the south side of Myrtle Beach, on land I guess that was donated way back in 1934 by Myrtle Beach Farms. So it's not the biggest state park, but it is actually the first state park in South Carolina, with a mile of pure beach. And from the campground, it's about 300 yards to the beach. And I understand, I think that the campground's a little bigger than it looks when you come in because it sprawls out quite a bit, but I believe there's 278 campsites for RVs and tents. Different setups, a little bit unique each one is, I would say. But it's pet friendly. Oh, most state parks are, but they're pet friendly. They were pet friendly on the beach as well, at least this time of year. After Memorial Day, I think there was some signage that talked about pets are allowed on the beach after Memorial Day, as well as bicycles. So those are shut down during the busy seasons, evidently. But when we were there, it was pet friendly, bike friendly. But yeah, so when you pull in, it's kind of picturesque when you pull into this state park. So you're driving down. If anyone's been to Myrtle Beach, it's pretty touristy in certain sections, but then when you get to the state park, you pull in and there's Spanish moss hanging from the trees and the ground, the grand and oversprawling the entrance road, so it was enough to block out the sun. Very cool. You kind of felt like you were in a jungle pulling in, especially off the busy strip that is Myrtle Beach. Our spot was mostly sand, I guess sand and gravel. The camp host did a good job clearing off the leaves and some of the things falling from the trees between campers. So when you got in, it was kind of a brush clean. I assume they used a leaf blower and a rake to clean off, but it was compacted sand, I would say. And we had electric, which was a 30 amp hookup on 120 volts, and then we also had a water hookup. I'm not sure. I looked at a few sites that were empty, and I never saw a 50 amp. I'm not sure if they have a 50 amp service there, if it's all 30, especially with the age of this campground. It's possible that they're all 30 amps. But our spot was also actually kind of wedged in between two trees. If you can kind of tell from the angle, I got some footage of it. But a little hard to get into. Across the street from our site was the restrooms and shower house. And then they had some wood structure kind of blocking, so you couldn't really turn in too tight or back in too tight. But we were able to get in, luckily. And some of the sites were much wide open. There was a lot bigger rigs there than us in some of the sites. And they had long Class A's and a few of them large fifth wheels. But they weren't cranking as tight as we had to get into our spot. So there's room for all sizes. And so the overall campground, you tell by the video, is pretty wooded in general. Some sites had a little more sunshine, I would say, or there'd be opening in the trees. It's just kind of the luck of the draw. Problem is, when you're booking a lot of campsites, especially when you've never been there before, sometimes these websites will have a photograph of the campsite, but it's just a simple photograph, and sometimes it's really dated, but you can't see everything. You can't see maybe how close the trees are together to get your rig in necessarily, and you can't see above to see what kind of tree coverage. We were pretty enclosed with trees. There was a small little gap just at the rear of our camper that had a little bit of an opening, and I was able to point the Starlink mini dish that direction, which wasn't ideal, but somehow we were still able to get some signal. It wasn't perfect for video and calling and Wi-Fi calling and so forth, because there would be interruptions, but for things like streaming on TV, YouTube TV, things like that, Netflix, it works pretty well. For those types of programs, if you don't know, a lot of times they'll preload in the background. So if you put on a show on Netflix, you're watching it with a good signal, it's actually loading more than you're getting, meaning there's 5-10 minutes loaded up in the background. So if you do lose signal, it'll keep playing. So little stuff like that works, but for Teams calls or Zoom calls, something like that, you really want to be unobstructed the best you can. That really wasn't an option here. Some of the sites I think had a better opportunity for that. But once again, you never know when you're trying to book these sites until you get there, unfortunately. And a place like this with Myrtle Beach State Park, it's full. You don't just get the option to bounce to another site because they're booked. You can ask maybe on an off week, but when we were there, it was booked. So the cool thing is, like I said, you're only like 300 yards from the beach, so it's a short walk. Or if you want to ride your bikes, you can. Down by the beach, they have bike racks. And we were able to go to the beach pretty often. We were there a handful of days, and we tried to go each day. And then, of course, my wife walks our dog Lily, and she pulls her to the beach every morning, no matter what. So, but with it being dog friendly this time of year, it was convenient as well. So that we get there on a Saturday, it's full. The next day, the weather forecast is pretty bad, and it's supposed to rain all day. So we made plans to actually go to an aquarium, and the aquarium was called Ripley's Aquarium, located at Broadway at the beach, just a few miles. It was a short drive. I don't think it was 15 minutes away from the state park. There's a lot going on at Broadway at the beach. If you haven't been there, I'll get into some of that here shortly. But so we get there, we show up, and it's sunny, and we're kind of bummed because it's our first full day there, and we would have went to the beach or did something outside, but the forecast was kind of moving around, and the rain was pushing back and so forth. So we went into the aquarium. Pretty cool. I've never been to a Ripley's Aquarium. Maybe you have, but very as expected, kid friendly, but very engaging. So they have tons of exhibits. I think pull the kids right in. It's fun for adults too, but tons of exhibits. They had, as soon as we walk in, they have giant seahorses, probably the biggest seahorses I've ever seen in an aquarium. They have a manna shrimp exhibit, which was awesome. If you know anything about the manna shrimp and how hard they can punch, but they had a huge manna shrimp right there at the beginning. And then, of course, with most aquariums, there's going to be a popular penguin exhibit. So they had a bunch of penguins swimming and running around. Pretty big display. We're able to get a little bit of video and get some of the penguins playing. And then something cool that I don't think I've ever seen at an aquarium is they actually had a full goldfish room, goldfish exhibit, and all different goldfishes and facts and sizes, and it was pretty cool. My son liked it. But yeah, generally, you're going there for some of the exotic fish and sea creatures, but it was pretty neat. And then they had piranhas, I think pretty large tank of red piranhas. And then this is probably, usually there's some type of touch pool at the aquariums or the centers that we'll visit, but this is the first time I think I saw a jellyfish touch pool, and now they were moon jellies, and we've actually found moon jellies on some of our adventures down the Atlantic coast. But they had a full tank full of moon jellyfish that you could touch, or the kids could touch, and they had some workers there to kind of help them. But it was pretty neat. My son liked it. And then some of the other things, let's see, they had lionfish on display, which was neat. Pretty large tank, multiple lionfish in there. And then they had probably the main, I would say the main attraction maybe. They had a huge tank, and with everything in it, your sharks and larger fish and everything in it. So this huge tank, and it winds around the bottom, I guess, level. So this aquarium is multi-level and open up in the middle, and you can kind of see everything just to bring you in. But the huge tank was really cool. So you go and you get in to this tunnel to start, and there's a little conveyor belt, so you can ride the conveyor belt. It moves really slow, but then it kind of keeps everybody moving to be able to see the tank, and it wraps around and around. It went quite a while. You can step off the conveyor belt if you want to spend more time in a certain area too, so that's an option. But they had obviously sharks, different types of sharks. Hammerhead sharks were in there as well. They had sawfish, which was pretty cool. He was huge. I think there's a couple of them actually. They had sea turtles swimming around, obviously all different types of fish, just in general. But it was really neat. The tank was gigantic, and there's actually an option above. I think you could pay to go out on a clear bottom boat on that same tank and kind of look down at the fish and the creatures, which was cool. We didn't do that, but I don't think I was the only one doing it that day we were there. But they had everything. Of course, they have your eels swimming around. They had a pretty cool octopus that we got to get up close. And then they had at the aquarium a full jellyfish exhibit. So all different types of jellyfish, not just the moon jellies that you got a chance to see, which was pretty cool. multiple different tanks. Big place. We spent a lot of time there. I mean, I think you're moving around a lot. There's a lot to see, but it goes quick. And then they had a penguin parade. So they started announcing over the bullhorn that there's going to be this penguin parade, and everyone needs to stand back, and staff are walking around moving everybody back. So I thought maybe naively that they were going to parade these penguins around the aquarium. We're going to get some kind of waddle around. It was going to be pretty cool, and with their handlers or maybe some fish treats in front of them. But it was just a cart, so it was cool. I guess the kids probably still liked it, but they just had them in a glass kind of cube, pulling them on a wagon around. So it's better than, I guess, no parade. But I was thinking they were going to be jumping around and getting wild, running around, but not so lucky. Then this aquarium over there at Ripley's also had a stingray touch pool, and actually our hometown zoo has a pretty cool stingray touch pool, but this one was a little bit different at Ripley's. So the stingrays in this touch pool were not just babies like we would see at some of the other ones. They were actually, I'm sure there were some babies in there, but they were huge. They had some huge stingrays, and very mature stingrays. And it actually had a two-tier section. So up top where the shallow area where they would come up, and some people paid and got the fish to feed them, so they were coming up to the kids to touch. And then it stepped down to pretty deep, I don't know, 10, 15 foot deep side of the tank. And then a lot of the bigger ones were hanging out down there. But the cool thing is you could actually walk down the stairs and around, and you could see from underwater all the stingrays. And yeah, it was pretty neat. My son likes the stingrays a lot. We spent quite a bit of time there. So we leave the aquarium. So we were still at Broadway at the beach. And this Broadway at the beach is a whole thing. It's, maybe you guys are well familiar, but it's shopping, it's restaurants, it's immersive experiences. I think you can tell they probably have music and concerts there at different times of the day. So we wanted to walk around a little bit. But of course, as soon as we leave the aquarium, it is pouring rain. Not just a little, but it's pouring rain. And I had the umbrellas in the truck, so I guess ran out to get the umbrellas, and then we wanted to still kind of walk around. Wasn't very busy, of course, with the weather for a Sunday, but we walked around a little bit, and then we wanted to grab some lunch, and we decided there's a Margaritaville that was right kind of nearby the aquarium. I've never been to one. My family's never been to one, so we figured we'd give it a try. It's touristy as probably expected, but it was closed. The food was okay. I mean, the whole experience, it's kind of a whole experience. They've got the music and Jimmy Buffett concerts playing, and then there's this whole hurricane thing they do on the half hour. It's kind of an event with flashing lights and things, so it's kind of cool. We got to see that a couple times just on the time of our stay. But the Broadway at the beach, like I said, they got all kind of stuff going on. They even there's this huge pond, so you feel like you're on the water, and even like the restaurants, there's outdoor sitting. You feel like you're on the water, and but they're not near the ocean. It's off the strip, but they put this huge pond in the middle to kind of give it that feel, I guess. It's a treated pond. They've got tons of koi fish swimming around. You can feed them as you want, but all these restaurants have businesses. A lot of them back up to the water, and they'll have on water seating. And then they had out in the middle of the water, they have a jet boat, which was, you could pay for rides on a jet boat, and this guy just went around doing 360s and different things. It seemed like some of the families that were partaking were having a good time, and it runs you around. It looks like they had a couple of the boats there, maybe for the busier times. And yeah, it was cool. I think anything you want, they probably have there to do or to buy. So, for everything from obviously the ice cream shops and the candy stores. There was a magic shop I think we saw for the kids. I think they had shoe stores and higher end clothing stores too, if that's your gig. And then a couple other pretty substantial venues, I would say, restaurants / outdoor concert venues set up. Not a whole lot was going on with the weather, but it looked like it would probably be pretty hopping during the season. So we went there for that day, and then we head back to the campground. The campground we liked, so even just biking in the campground, sometimes we take advantage of that, especially with my son, being younger, where you're not going out on busy roads and so forth. So this campground was pretty sprawling, and not a ton of vehicle traffic, maybe outside the checkout times and the check-in times. So we take advantage of kind of the safe bike riding on the roads. We like to ride around the park a few times a day, and I actually even take our dog Lily for a ride. She likes to, well, essentially pull me like a sled dog, but we were able to do that around the campground, and it's nice. You know, they have a camp store in the campground, and there's another one at the beach I'll talk about here shortly, but the camp store right in the center. I mean, all the usual stuff you can expect. They, you know, sell you firewood, ice, of course, snacks, ice cream. They have camper RV gear. Sometimes, generally most of these camp stores will carry some minimal supplies in terms of like sewer hoses and electrical cords and things you might need or forget, or something that would fail. And then right near there, they had one of their laundry rooms, and they had, I think, at least two. There may have been three. I think I saw 2 laundry rooms, and they're pretty large for a state park. They had multiple units in this. I think it was about $2 per load, which is pretty typical, I would say, for the average. And then the other thing that we found interesting, this campground was probably the first one that we've been to, and maybe the only one we've been to since, that they have a lot of venomous snake signs, a lot of warnings out there. So they warn you about the copperhead snakes, and you know what to look for and to watch out. So they warn you to, you know, carry a flashlight at night, not to wear open-toe shoes at night. I guess the snakes only bite your toes, and they don't bite your ankles or anything, but they didn't want you to take open-toed shoes. Anyway, I did talk to one of the rangers about the copperheads, and they said they're here. They obviously try to avoid humans, but usually they're so well camouflaged, but when there is an incident, they're just getting stepped on if people aren't looking or don't see them. But we did not get lucky, or I guess unlucky. We didn't see any snakes, unfortunately. We looked for them the whole time we were there, but didn't get to see any. And then there are a couple playgrounds that we saw, maybe 3 playgrounds, but one real close to our site. So there's one in the campground. The vegetation here is so strong that things are kind of blocked in. There's a little trail, but there's so much tree growth and so forth that things are blocked in. But there's a playground, I don't know, 4 or 5 campsites down, and then back into the woods about 50 feet. So we checked that out a little bit. A lot of kids were hanging out there during the weekend and seemed to enjoy it. And then, but mainly, we spent a lot of time at the beach. My son usually will choose to go to the beach over pretty much any activity at some of these campgrounds. But the beach is very pretty. Of course, we're there multiple times. It was so close. It's so easy to go to and get to from the campground. And like I said earlier, it's dog friendly at this time of the year. There's also boardwalks kind of down the front of the beach. You can walk through the state park side. So outside the campground, it's towards the back, and not that it's illegal to come in there, but they kind of keep that separate for campers. And then everything else in the state park, of course, is open to the public. So, but out there in the open to the public section, they've got boardwalks and sidewalks, and obviously shelter houses and parking lots and so forth for everyone that can come to the beach. And I think there is a small day pass fee for those who weren't camping would pay to come to the state park, to come to the access. But there was also another playground, larger playground out there in the state park side outside the campground as well. And yeah, let's see. Oh, I forgot to mention the airplanes. I hope your kids like airplanes. I hope they like seeing them. I hope they like hearing them. The airplanes are pretty constant. Almost kind of in a joking manner, there's so many airplanes coming and going. Most of them are commercial airliners, I would say, landing here at the Myrtle Beach International Airport. Some of them are smaller and coming off, and what they do is at least the strip that we were nearby, they would come out over the ocean and then come back to shore to the landing. But they would get pretty low. We joked about it in our camper, so it was warm enough, we were running the AC, so it's not an issue in terms of like disturbing you or maybe waking you up or something like that. But if I were a tent camper, I would hope to have a loud sound machine or some earplugs. I would say that, because the airplanes were pretty continuous coming in next to the state park. So something to, maybe the kids like it. I mean, airplanes are cool, but there's a lot of them. And then they didn't have a dog park at the state park, and I'll tell you, most state parks do not have dog parks. We wrongfully, I would say, set out into one of our first state parks we ever went to in Ohio, and they had a dog park, and we were just, oh, this is great. We can take Lily down there to run. State parks have dog parks and yada yada yada, but generally speaking, they do not. So anyway, they didn't, but I usually try to find something nearby, and there's a dog park just about 2 miles away. So it's pretty cool, pretty close, so we could run over there real quick with the truck and take Lily. It was a large dog park, mostly kind of a sand base, I guess to be expected in the area. And then they had a little small dog section, and then they had a huge wide open section surrounding a pond. That was just kind of a free-for-all, I guess. I don't know, but it was a huge section. A lot of people spent time over there. But Lily enjoyed it. It was busy. There was always dogs there to play with. But 2 miles. So if you have a dog that needs to run like Lily, we can't walk Lily. We can walk her, I shouldn't say that. We can't walk the energy out of Lily. My wife can walk her 10 miles a day, and that doesn't make her tired. She needs to run. So between the dog parks and then the sled dog training that she thinks she's performing when I'm riding my bike, usually we can get her tired that way, but that's about it. She's super high energy. And then I mentioned earlier, so we have the camp store in the campground, and then at the public beach, main beach area, there's a beach store. Not far, it's a short walk, or we rode our bikes down there, but it's not a far trip. And they have this beach store that is open to the public outside the campground. And it's like a second camp store, I would say, but it's larger, and it's down on the pier. There's a fishing pier it's kind of attached to. You actually walk through the store. I assume there's a gate to go around, but how it's set up is you walk through the store to get to the fishing pier. And I'm betting you can buy your permit to fish, and they had bait and stuff. But the pier store on the beach, it had the most souvenirs I think you could ever want from Myrtle Beach. I mean, in a good way. They had so much stuff for sale. I mean, between magnets and shirts and hats and bags and everything Myrtle Beach that you can expect. Usually, and I know this is more touristy of a destination, but most of the time state parks will have a couple things, maybe with their name on it, but this place was loaded. And they had snacks, and they had scoop ice cream for sale as well. Fun store.
Let me see his face.
It was kind of cool, and then, like I said, off the back there's a fishing pier, and you can walk out to the edge, obviously for free, and there's a couple people fishing, but not a whole lot going on. Wasn't very busy the day we were there, but just a second option. And if you want something more than what the camp store offers, the beach store has a little bit more. And I've got to talk about hickory nuts. So, as I mentioned, this site is very wooded, or the campground itself is very wooded. There are hickory trees, tall hickory trees, and I know we're there this time of year, August, September, maybe is to be expected, but the hickory nuts are falling every so often. When they hit your camper, it sounds like a gunshot is going off when you're inside. I mean, it is the loudest thing you can imagine. It feels like it should be a 10-pound lead ball coming from the tree. And they're these hickory nuts. And we have solar panels on top, so I'm sure when it hits those, it's loud, or if it hits the air conditioner unit, or maybe one of your skylight vent fans, it's going to be loud. But it hits so hard. I've been in the camper a couple times, and it would hit right above my head, and it's hard to describe how loud this little nut is. I actually climbed up on the roof just to see and make sure there was no damage to any of the solar panels or any of the plastic up there. I didn't see any, but there's hickory nuts everywhere. I mean, we kept the awning out even when it wasn't sunny, just for protection, because I wasn't trying to take one to the head and get knocked out. But they were falling. I mean, it wasn't just our site, it was everywhere. I talked to one of the camp hosts, and he said, yeah, they're terrible this time of year. But yeah, funny stuff. It was just kind of an ongoing joke, and they would hit so hard, and it was enough to wake you up in the middle of the night, even with the AC running. And but yeah, didn't get hit with one, so that's a good thing. So we went into one of the nights, we decided to go into Myrtle Beach and go to dinners. There's a restaurant called Riptides right on the water. Pretty cool, touristy, but cool. It had multiple levels, and I'm assuming it's pretty busy during the season, pre-Memorial Day, just based on the amount of staff they have working there and the amount of tables and different things. But we grabbed some food and some drinks, and it was right next to the Sky Wheel. There's other touristy activities like a slingshot bungee cord thing you can do at some different amusement park rides, I would say. It's all kind of down in that certain area. You can walk the boardwalk. We didn't spend a ton of time down there, but we went in to check it out a little bit. And then back to the campground, we always try to see the nature center if they have one. Most state parks do. Some are more grand than others. But this one was small, but it was pretty cool. It had a little aquarium, or a couple aquariums, I think. And they had a lot of educational information. Staff was friendly as expected and willing to come out and talk. And they had some different things in the aquarium, and they had some shells. And we talked a little bit about some of the snakes in the area and when and how often they're seeing things. But nice little nature center. Didn't have to spend an hour there or anything to take it all in, but probably solid half an hour. There's quite a bit to do. And then of course we're back on the beach as I mentioned earlier, pretty often, at least every day at some point, maybe a couple times a day. Great sand, waves were pretty coming in. One thing we had found at a couple beaches before, but we didn't really actually know what they were. I guess a pretty simple name, but when we were at this nature center, we were describing them, and they're what they call mole crabs. And they're pretty much everywhere. They just burrow down. You just don't necessarily know they're there if you don't know what to look for. But we had found, we kind of hit the jackpot. We found some movement in the sand with the waves in a certain area, and we have a little metal scoop for shells and different things. So we were able to grab some of these mole crabs and go through everything, which is pretty cool. My son likes catching any kind of nature, just taking a look at it. Kind of a little mini study, but we caught quite a few mole crabs. There was a ton out that day. And I guess back to the other wildlife. At this park, on our last day there, we found there was about 5 raccoons living up in one of the giant trees above our camper. I don't know if we either just didn't look for them. I assume they'd been up there a while. But the interesting thing is some of these state parks, you can't leave trash on the ground or trash out on your camper. We have a hook that we hang a trash bag from, and you can't leave trash in some of these state parks. Raccoons will come and tear right through your bag in a half an hour. It's pretty crazy. And then others, they don't really have raccoons, or they don't really have wildlife that's interested. Here, we had trash out, and the raccoons didn't bother it once. But I caught, like I said, 4 or 5 raccoons in the tree right above our camper. We were joking. I think some of them were up there launching hickory nuts down at our camper. They were hitting so hard. I didn't get any of that on film, but I think it was just the wind blowing it out with this time of the year. But overall, I think Myrtle Beach State Park's a fun park. Anything that close to the beach with easy access is right up our alley, our family's alley. I'd recommend a visit who likes the beach, and especially if you like airplanes. If you like airplanes, this is the spot. You guys want to camp at. But up next, I got a trip. We head over to Congaree National Park in South Carolina, and we stayed at a nearby state park called in the hills called Poinsett State Park. Well, we thought it was nearby. It's nearby on a map, but the roads are a little bit different. But National Park in South Carolina that we wanted to spend the day at, and I'm working on getting that one cut and get it out shortly. So thanks for watching if you're still here, and we'll see you on the next one.